August 25th Common Council meeting. Please call the roll.
Ford.
Here.
Allison Osby.
Here.
Krause.
Here.
Mugrower.
Here.
Erickson. Here. Peschel.
Present.
Palmieri.
Here.
Present 7.
Councilmember Ford will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the good things that have come to the city. May our decisions always be ones that are for the well-being of all whom we govern.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening we have a presentation by Ellers for the impact of 2021 capital improvement program on utility rates, followed by Miles Kimball redevelopment at 9th Avenue.
Good evening, everyone. John Cameron with Ellers, and we've got just a brief PowerPoint to walk through with you. There we go. Excellent. So we've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now, and annually we review and develop a preliminary financing plan that looks at paying for the capital costs for the city's water, sewer, and stormwater utilities for years, in this case now years 2021 through 2030. And really what we're evaluating is the impacts on utility rates, revenue bond, debt service coverage ratios, and then utility reserve levels. From a funding summary standpoint, the city's planned capital projects between 21 and 30 are projected to require approximately $226 million in long-term financing, and that is broken out to about just under $81 million for sewer, about $56.7 million for storm, and $88.4 million for water. So the approach to the cash flow analysis and overall financing plan, and this has been a historical practice within the city, is that utility projects would be funded with utility revenue bonds, which have existing rate covenants. And the way that revenue bonds work is on an annual basis, we always have to make sure that our user rates are sufficient to first pay our operating and maintenance expenses, and then have a net left over to pay, in this case of sewer, at least 110% of our existing revenue bonds, plus any revenue bonds that we'd be taking on, 130% for water, and 120% for storm water. So as we're developing kind of a long-range cash flow analysis, we have to be sensitive to the fact that we have existing debt coverage ratios, and that those debt coverage ratios need to be adhered to for any existing debt as well as any debt that we'd be taking on within each of the utilities. So to cover sewer first, from a sewer standpoint in terms of where we're going long term, and I know this is hard to see on screen, I did also pass out hard copies prior to the meeting. But from a rate increase standpoint, just to walk from top to bottom, we've got our total revenues up at the very top, including the first line being revenues from user rates, other revenues below the percentage increases, our projected operating and maintenance expenses between now and 2030, our existing debt service payments, and then future debt service payments, and then any cash funded capital expenses also shown within the cash flow analysis. So I think the positive news for the sewer utility, really for all three utilities, but for sewer first here, is that in terms of looking at where the utility is now, where performance was for 2019, and then based on the recommended capital improvements between now and 2030, I think what's possible is to do an every other year rate increase within the sewer system, projecting a 3.5% increase to revenues that would be necessary in 2021, and then a 4.5% projected increase in 2023, 5% in 25, in 27, and then 29. So a little bit better than what we showed last year, where we were on an annual rate increase trajectory within the sewer system. In terms of where that would put you within your debt coverage ratios, sewer is fairly healthy. It's projected that obviously any rate increase that we have would keep us above the 110 coverage requirement. We do get a little bit close to that 110 in the out years, but I think with all three utilities, in terms of what's being shown and projected long-term, is potentially the ability to do more cash funding of capital improvement projects and lower the annual debt requirement within each of the utilities. So I think in these out years, if we're continuing to accumulate cash within the sewer system, that does open up the ability to do less borrowing, more cash financing of capital improvement projects, which would help with the overall debt burden. On the water side, water is a regulated utility with the Public Service Commission. Any user rates we'd have to go in for would either be through a conventional rate case, which is a full-blown rate case with the Public Service Commission, which takes anywhere between 6 to 9 months to get through, or a simplified increase, which is an inflationary increase, and we have to be eligible to be able to do that. What we're projecting is the need, again, kind of with water, again, because of the because we're regulated, and it does take a while to get through that rate case process. What we show is an every other year, potential for increasing rates. We're looking at a 9% projected rate increase in 2021, and then having to come back in for a conventional rate case in 2023 and 2025. And then I think the door opens for two things. Number one, the possibility for simplified increases, assuming the utility is eligible, which really from an eligibility standpoint, we have to have a rate of return that would be lower than the PSC's benchmark standard, which we haven't been able to qualify for that in the last couple of years. But going forward, that may be a possibility, as well as, again, with water, the chance to cash fund capital improvement projects and lower the overall need for debt financing in future years as well. From a coverage standpoint, we're projecting to be over our 1.3 with the recommended rate increases, both now and into the future. The other thing I did want to mention with the concept of water rates is this was brought up last year during the budget workshop for the utilities, was the possibility of, say, economic economic type rates, or the concept of a lifeline rate. And a lifeline rate is something that would be a possibility in your next conventional rate case if you would so choose to do it. The Public Service Commission has granted this in the past. The concept of a lifeline rate would apply really just to your residential customers. And really what it does is it provides a user rate that is applicable to usage up to a specified level. So at the bottom of the slide, what's shown is actually an example from the City of Whitewater's tariff that applies to residential customers. So in their example, the first 2,000 gallons that a residential customer uses would be at a volumetric rate that is actually below the cost of service, so below price point, really with the goal of trying to meet a certain social or goal for your very low-end users who may or may not also be lower on the economic scale from an earnings standpoint. So in this case, they have a rate that is below benchmark or cost of service standpoint. Once you cross over that 2,000 gallons, you go up to, in this case, a volumetric rate of $2.34 per 1,000 gallons, and that's at price point or at cost of service. So something like that is certainly an option for the city. You could request it with the Public Service Commission, and it's something that the rate analyst, as they get to that point in the rate case, could work into the fold. You could also look at it with and without, and be able to make a decision at that time too. So, food for thought. Stormwater is looking at pretty consistent with what we showed the council last year. What we're recommending for 2021 is a 7% increase to user rates, and then going down to a 6% for a couple of year period through 2024, and then gradually starting to ratchet it down towards 5 and then 3 and then 2.5% rate increases going forward. But really that's necessary to continue to provide adequate debt coverage ratios. The stormwater utility historically has been a little bit thinner in terms of its debt coverage ratio, so it's certainly something that we have to continue to monitor and continue to look at annual user rate increases within this utility, and at least in terms of keeping it a little bit more linear in fashion compared to doing something every other year, but it would be bigger in nature. In terms of what this means, for the average ratepayer, residential ratepayer on a monthly basis. So we show all three utilities here: water on the very left-hand side, sewer in the middle, and stormwater on the right-hand side. Right now, average utility bill between all three would be just under $100 a month. Assuming these rate increases would go into effect, that would increase by $6.16 going into next year. What I will say with the water is, due to the process of going through PSC, my estimate in terms of best case scenario to get new rates into effect would probably be mid 2021, just based on their caseload and how long it takes to work through a conventional case. So take that into consideration here as you look at the analysis. And then you can see the projections over time through 2030 in terms of those recommended percentage increases. With that, I'm happy to turn it back over to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. As I understand it, we're on a 4-tier billing currently for water.
In terms of your volumetric rate?
Yes.
Yep.
And so I guess my question kind of goes back to that kind of lifeline rate concept. Sure. Would that also fall under the category of a conservation rate?
Technically it does. It's really, again, more to accomplish. So conservation rate is really to try to curb somebody's usage. It's sending a specific pricing signal to, in most cases, your residential customer class, because residents compared to businesses have the greatest opportunity to freely conserve water, at least in the eyes of the Public Service Commission. A lifeline rate is really more to provide an opportunities for your very low-end users to be able to, save a little bit of money compared to your more typical residential customers. So I would say no, it's not necessarily a conservation rate structure, although it kind of looks like it.
Because right now, with that 4 tiers that we have, as I understand it, the higher amount that you use, the less you're paying.
Right.
So if that were changed, yes, Mr. Van Gompel.
Just to jump in real quick, we have a 4-tier structure based on cost of service, and a lot of that modeling goes back to the Public Service Commission, so it's how do you recover your cost. And there are some communities that have more of a single-tier approach. A lot of that, again, as John was explaining, goes back to your cost analysis and looking at the cost of providing that service. Because there's a certain segment of our infrastructure that we need to recover from all users. And then there's a certain segment that that's based on the volumetric charge. So it's really that combination, and there's been some discussion from users about having that more equitably distributed in a fairness approach. So that's something we could look at when we do a new rate application.
So right now, we're in the middle of a rate application, right?
Well, technically, you've approved the rate application, but because of our rate of return, we have not completed that application with the Public Service.
So we could build that request in.
Yes.
Okay. Just curious if I understood the timing. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Anybody else? Questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe we have Mr. Hess here for the Miles Kimball redevelopment presentation.
Yes, thank you very much for letting us come and talk today. My name is Tim Hess. I am with Invista Analytics, here to talk to you about the Miles Kimball redevelopment project. I think all of you probably recognize this building. It's been something that people have been trying to develop for some time on the corner of South Main Street and 9th Avenue here. Tell you a little bit about the team that has been put together. We've got here today Brett Hildebrandt and Molly Urban are two people here from Oshkosh, a young couple that is getting into the entrepreneurial spirit here. They are going to be part owners and the lead developers for this particular project. Chet Wiesenberg is the architect that's looking to help out with this, and they've secured CR Structures to do the general contracting. So I want to give you a little bit of an idea of the project, what we're looking for, and the history, why we feel like this might deserve some support here. So I've got up there a map of what the proposed project was going to be back in 2008. The city, according to the assessor's records, acquired the overall block from Miles Kimball back in '97 and 2005 is when the RDA acquired the parcels that end up comprising this particular piece. In 2008, the Common Council had approved terms for a development agreement with these two LLCs, MK1 and MK2, which I believe was led by Brian Burns. And the idea was that he was going to go in, develop the townhouses, and then after the townhouses were put in, he would later come back and do the Miles Kimball project. So he did complete the townhouses, they're there. In 2011, he came back and met the conditions for the terms to acquire the Miles Kimball parcel from the RDA. So he did that in 2011, but unfortunately nothing ended up happening with it. To the point where in January 2018, Bridgeview Holdings ended up acquiring it, and the team of, I believe, Will Steiner and Javad Ahmad are the present owners. This new group that is coming in has executed a purchase agreement as of July of this year and are looking to redevelop this particular project. So they're looking to do it as straight up market rate apartments. So we figure we can get 26 to 28 apartment units in there. Really tall ceilings, so these are going to be pretty trendy, cool apartments with adequate parking to hopefully handle that. Just to give you, again, we're in the preliminary stages of this, but to give you some ideas of the overall financials that we're looking at a $3.9 million total investment, which would generate roughly $2.9 million in incremental value. And if we did a 20-year pay-go TIF, the 10-year internal rate of return that we're looking at is only 6.2%. If you don't provide TIF assistance, they would be looking at like a 1 to 2% internal rate of return. And to be clear, doing this 6.2% is assuming that these guys are willing to take a risk with the city. And what I mean by that is this: the rental rates that we're assuming here are premium rental rates. It is as if the Sawdust District is completed. We're not proposing something low. to give a poor rate of return. We're proposing something high, and we really need other things to go in to complement what's going on here. So why TIF assistance? Well, here's a building that we've had sitting empty for 15 plus years. Another note that I would have is this particular site is kind of unfortunate. On the corner of 9th and South Main Street, if you went to the south side of 9th Street or 9th Ave, you would be in an opportunity zone. This is just at the border, no opportunity zone, no new market tax credits. You could do historic on this building, given its association with the Miles Kimball. But the problem with historic is you can't touch the facade. So if we wanted to put apartments in there, we got to go in and put 60 windows in. No way historic would allow that. So that's part of the reason why this thing is sitting vacant. And then if we're talking about purely residential, WEDC is not going to support that in any way, shape, or form. So really, the only thing that we can possibly ask for assistance any way that we can is coming in and asking the city to collaborate. You know, at the university, I sometimes go to the business school and listen to the real estate guys talk. And they always talk about if you're going to develop an overall site, that the first thing you do is you bring in people, that you can bring people in and convince them to travel to get to all the amenities. But then once you have people there, you may develop a market to start getting people to put commercial in or to put entertainment in. And so really what we're looking to do here is kind of take that first step to start lighting up the sawdust district for you. So that's my brief presentation. We got Molly and Brett that are willing to answer any questions or any questions of me, and yeah.
What are the rents projected to be?
For 2-bedroom, we're at $1,200. For 1-bedroom, I think we're at like $950.
Approximate square footage of those units?
I think the 2-bedrooms they're small. We're talking like 850 square foot 2-bedroom. It's tight. So we're banking on the trendiness of this. I mean, it's, you know, you're going to have like 12, 13 foot ceilings. It's huge inside, but.
Has oh, go ahead, Mr.
No, you
Ruger.
go right ahead.
Has Mr. Wiesenberg's firm done any preliminary type of renderings to kind of give like a visual of what it looks like, or no?
No.
Okay.
Councilmember Mugrauer and then Ford.
Appreciate it. I have 2 questions. One's the simple one. Can you restate what the potential return was without assistance? It was 1 point something.
It was between 1% and 2%.
Okay. And then a relatively blunt question. I know you appreciate those just as much as I do. It has sat vacant for 15 years.
Yep.
It is, it's an eyesore in its current state. And yes, while it's has historic value because of its connection with the family and what that company and that family did for this community, it's still just a white box on the corner of Main and 9th. And what's the value in continuing keeping that building standing and not just tearing it down and building something new that's easier to work with? Because structurally, that's one of the biggest challenges, if I'm not incorrect. The engineering and the structure of this building is one of its biggest challenges in terms of how do you retrofit inside of that shell?
I don't know that from listening to Chet, I don't think that he would necessarily agree with you in terms of that we can put something in here, and those are big timbers that can support a lot of things. I know the previous people that were looking to develop, we were looking for a rooftop restaurant, and then all of a sudden timbers weren't sufficient and you needed steel, and all of a sudden it skyrocketed in terms of price. You know, I think this view, well, it's not up right now, but this view on the questions is potentially we're going to put a rooftop deck up there, and getting that 4th story view, you can see out over the lake. That would be kind of cool. But I think the real issue is this. At this stage, people have real money into it. That somebody has paid money from the previous developer to acquire this, and at this stage, they're unlikely to let it go for anything less than that. And so the prospect of buying this and knocking it down, well, if you knock it down, it's really only worth the value of the land. And I suspect nobody's going to be willing to take that big of a loss at this stage. So I think you're kind of stuck in this position where you're looking for somebody to do something with that building.
Fair point, appreciate that, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember
My
Ford.
questions were answered.
Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. I guess my questions are more pragmatic in regards to the building itself. The current owner or the previous owner wanted to add an elevator to it, correct?
Yes,
And is there going to be an elevator done in this project?
yes, there has to be.
Okay. There has, I assume there would be.
Yep.
Because it's residential.
Yep.
So, and then, my question actually comes from Mr. Mugrauer's comment in regards to it being a big white brick building. That white is not the original color of the building that's been painted on, so would that be sandblasted off and we'd go back to the original color of the original brick color, or any thoughts?
I can't tell you that. I'm not the designer.
Okay, because, I mean, that would be wonderful, seeing an original brick building that was not white on that corner. I think would be really significant and be really pleasant on the eyes in regards to its historical elements.
Mhm.
So I agree in regards to the windows. I mean, I was lucky enough to work on a project where we had the original windows still in the building, to be able to do that, and that's not going to be the case there because a lot of them have been bricked up and everything. And so I generally am excited by historical residential projects like this, so I think it's a good attempt to go forward to continue the conversation about it. So, and I think there's been an expectation that something's going to happen on that corner for 15 years, and I think that this would be something exciting. One other element is there going to be no, at any point there'll be no like commercial side of this development?
Right now, it's plotted off as no commercial.
Okay.
I appreciate that the planning department isn't necessarily thrilled with that. I know the architect and the contractor have had conversations about what could potentially go there. You know, I mean, I get it. It's right on South Main Street. It's right there. So there's conversations about it, but from a financial perspective, I think we know we can get this leased up really quick if it is all residential. Right now, you look on South Main Street, and I would say I would be hard pressed to want to invest in putting in something commercial at this
Okay.
spot. You know,
Sure.
a couple years down the road, if we invigorate the Sawdust District, I get it. But right now, I would rather avoid that.
Okay, and then one more question, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to make the assumption that these are going to be kind of more open concept apartments in regards to because of the lofty layouts that already exist within the building itself, correct?
As
Or-
open as 850 square foot two-bedroom can feel, yes.
Well, you can make it happen. I mean, that's the element of universal design, is making that,
Right.
is taking that element and making it an accessible design for all people
Mhm.
of varying abilities to be able to reside in units like this.
And I think, you know, you spoke of accessibility. You know, part of our research in terms of who tends to rent some of these types of apartments are kind of the retired folks. And so we're going to make sure we've got as much as we can in terms of accessibility so that they could potentially go in there. We don't want to exclude any potential tenants.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question, then we can come back
Okay,
to you.
thank you.
Kind of related, going back to the windows, did I understand in the presentation that one of the rationale for requesting TIP is because you wouldn't want to go after historic credits because you could not put windows in, therefore, if you went with TID, or if we went with TID, you would be putting windows in on those
Correct.
sides? Okay,
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure I
Correct.
understood that. Okay.
Sure. And then I think my last question is, how many units were there?
28 is what we think we can put in there right now.
Okay, so 26 to 28.
Yep.
And I guess the parking, what's the ratio that we're supposed to use in regards to parking for residential complexes?
If I recall, I think it is 1 parking stall for each bedroom up to 2 bedrooms. If you go above 2 bedrooms, then it's an additional half stall for each additional bedroom. So this is not going to, we would have to ask for a variance on this.
Sure. Okay, and then, and I guess the idea of, I tend to look at these projects and say that 2 handicap parking spots is not enough, but understanding that the owner and developer has the ability to go above and beyond that if they so choose, correct?
Correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, we will move on to public comment, and I want to check in with the clerk to see if we have anyone registered for public comment on any of the agenda items.
Yes, we have several individuals. Andrew Flowers.
Andrew Flowers.
Sir, if you'd like
Over to the
use
side
this
here,
podium.
please. Thank you. Yeah, if you could state your name and address and which agenda item you're speaking to. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Flowers. I am the Senior Real Estate and Construction Manager for AT&T Wireless. I'm here speaking on, I believe it's number 20 on the agenda. I don't have the agenda in front of me. Okay. We are proposing to build a new communication facility on EAA property to help support the EAA fly-in that happens in August. This facility is in great need of upgrade from our current facility because of the sheer amount of usage that happens during that event. Over the past few years, the event has grown and grown. Now we're close to 600,000 plus participants using their phones, streaming video, and our current facility really can't handle that kind of infrastructure that exists today. So we are proposing to build a new monopole that requires us to have 2 individual centers for our antennas, because the antennas that we're proposing to put in are kind of they're actually the same antennas that we use for like a Lollapalooza or the festivals down in Milwaukee or the DNC. They're giant round antennas, about 38 inches around each. They have to be stacked on each other for them to work properly. And we also have to have the separation on our platforms because the frequencies cannot work together without bleeding onto each other and having issues with the phone service. So that's one of the reasons why we have asked to build this new facility. We are currently on a facility right across the street that was evaluated, and for several reasons that were outlined, I believe, in the information that has been sent to you. I'll just run those over real quick. We have, from our point of view, the proposal from the tower owner across the street saying that their tower can be extended is really not a valid ask for several reasons. One, they still don't have FAA approval to add onto that tower. If you read through their application that they sent into the FAA, there is actually public comment available until sometime in September. 2, there's nothing that's stated in there of whether or not they can have the authority from the landowner that the tower sits on to be extended. When we did our evaluation of the facility, when we did our walks, we were unable to adequately get our RAD centers, meaning the centers where the antennas are at, separated from the current facility tenants on there. Team Sprint is on that facility at 60 feet. I believe that in the application or in the documentation that was sent over from the tower owner, that it states that AT&T can have 79 feet. We can't be at 79 feet because that's what FAA would be at, so we'd be down to about 72 feet. with the lightning rod, we'd have to have that second rad center, which would be about 62 feet, and Sprint's at 60 feet. We don't have the separation, which means that we would have to then take our second rad center, move it underneath Sprint, which would not have the same coverage. That's one of the reasons why we did not evaluate and use that facility for co-location. Economic burdensome. We got into that a little bit at the Planning Commission. The facility that we're at today is about 5 times the amount of rent that we would normally pay for an equal facility. It has gone out of control. And one of the reasons that happens is because of the success of EAA. Every year, they come back to us and say, we need more help here. We need more facilities for our people that are attending. We need it for our merchants selling things. And when that happens, that means we have to add more antennas, have to add more radios, which literally is like a la carte with that tower. So literally every time I go in, they're telling me I can't have things on that facility. I have to pay extra. And we've gotten to a point where it's untenable for that reason, but it really goes back to the technology issues. The antennas that we're asking to use are called masting antennas. They will hold thousands of phone calls and video at a time. And they are able to be upgraded as the need arises from EAA. We have to add radios. If we were on the other facility, every time we had a radio, it'd be more cost, restructurals, things like that. The tower that we're proposing to build will be built for 4 carriers. So it'll be, we're going to take 2 of those, and it'll be available for 2 more carriers to come on that tower if necessary. The tower is, let's see.
Excuse me, one moment. Council, are we okay with going beyond 5 minutes for the gentleman?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'll wrap it up.
No.
I just want to make sure everybody's got the gist of what we're trying to do out there. Because a facility of this magnitude is hundreds of thousands of dollars that AT&T is willing to invest in your community. And we upgraded one of the other facilities on the site this past year. Unfortunately, the event did not happen, but it's ready to go for next time. And the other thing that is extremely important about this facility is that it will support FirstNet, which is for first responders. So this facility will have those antennas on there. They are currently on the existing site, but by us being able to go from our RAD center today to these newer, higher RAD centers, we'll be able to cover more of the property and be able to have better safety coverage for first responders if that ever arises. Let's see. I think that's about it. I'm here to answer any other technical questions that you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, before you move on, can I ask just a quick question? Not of him, but of council and of staff a little
Okay.
bit. Council, we still have not decided how we're going to proceed in terms of interacting with the speakers that come to us. Normally, they would come up and speak on an individual item. We'd have a chance to interact. The item's not on the floor for us to interact with them at this moment.
Right.
So,
So what we
City Clerk, would you mind, or maybe legal would mind chiming in terms of just us asking questions and interacting with them? Anybody who wants to speak to us on a given topic, how would you prefer that we proceed? Just making sure
You can interact with them and ask questions as normal. You're just not taking the item up at this
Okay.
point.
Just wanted to make sure. I appreciate just.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
certainly. So did
Nope.
you have some
Not right
questions
now.
for the gentleman?
Nope, not
Okay.
right now. That's okay.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Who is registered next?
David Golzer.
Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Dave Gelzer. I'm the EAA Legal Counsel. My office at 3000 Poberezny Road in Oshkosh, 54902. I just want to say that this tower is very important to us. As all of you know, the event is huge. It's been growing very, very steadily. We were at about 600,000, I think, in 2018 and 642,000 in 2019. So if it were not for the interruption from the COVID virus, we would have had I think, a bigger and better event this year. The growth is wonderful for us. We earn roughly half our annual gross revenue at AirVenture, so having it is very important. We've invested a lot in the grounds, in the facility. We have new infrastructure. We have addressed traffic problems, which everybody who's attended is aware of. We have new parking areas. We have new traffic routing. We are acquiring land and have acquired land to allow for more aircraft parking. So we're spending a lot of money to make the event bigger and better and more satisfying for all of our attendees and patrons. As Mr. Flowers said, and as any of you who have attended know, cell phone coverage is very valuable. It grows exponentially. There have been complaints that it isn't good enough. I'm not technically competent in this, but I understand that when you bring in all those automobiles and vehicles and all those airplanes, it really makes it more difficult to put up the infrastructure for good cell phone coverage. We requested that AT&T provide this tower. They've generously agreed to do it. It's a win-win for them and for us, and I think for our patrons. So I just urge you to consider this carefully. It's very valuable to us and will make our event more attractive, more satisfying, more comfortable for the hundreds of thousands of people who attend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy Fitz.
Good evening. My name is Andy Fitz. I am with Mass Tech Network Solutions. We are the site acquisition vendor that filed the conditional use permit request on behalf of AT&T. I think Mr. Flowers has done an excellent job covering all the technical details. I just wanted to also state for the record that we have received approval from the Federal Aviation Administration. We've received approval from the county airport. We have a positive recommendation from city staff as well as the Plan Commission. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Did council members have any questions? I'm sorry. All right.
Paul Jonas.
Good evening. Paul Jonas. I'm an attorney with Michael Best and Friedrich. I represent AT&T. Don't have a whole ton to add to what Andy and Andrew have said, and Dave. I would only note that I do believe that the folks that own the tower that AT&T is currently located on did submit a letter that suggested that there were some deficiencies or argued that there were deficiencies with the application, specifically as to an affidavit that's required that essentially explains how it is that we considered, AT&T that is, considered co-locating and determined that it wasn't viable. I would suggest to you that there are no deficiencies in that application. It was deemed complete by city attorney, and of course you have the ability to interpret your own ordinances and make that decision. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Kevin Pollard.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Pollard. I am an attorney representing SBA Communications, or SBA Structures LLC. SBA does own the existing cell tower located at 525 West 20th Avenue in the city of Oshkosh. This is approximately 210 feet from the site of the new tower, which is being proposed with this permit. We did file a letter. It was filed on August 20th. I also appeared at the Plan Commission meeting to oppose this application. The reason for our opposition is that both state statute, Wisconsin Statute 660404, and the city's telecommunication ordinance, they're both designed to promote co-location on existing mobile service structures whenever that's feasible to do so. The benefits of co-location are that the community does not experience duplicative cell towers or a cluster of cell towers in a given area, and the reasons why that should be avoided range from degradation of property values to safety issues. There's other reasons why co-location is preferred method of placing mobile service equipment. And to promote co-location on existing structures, both the state statute and the ordinance require that the applicant who is seeking to construct a new tower must file a sworn statement from an individual who has responsibility over the placement of the support structure, attesting that co-location within the applicant's search range would not result in the same mobile service functionality, coverage, and capacity, is technically infeasible, or is economically burdensome to the mobile service provider. And the application in this case failed to comply with this requirement for several reasons. The applicant did not evaluate the feasibility of co-location on the existing tower. No sworn statement was included with the original application when it was filed in July, I believe. July 20th is the date which it appears to be filed on. And there was a statement filed by AT&T on August, it was dated August 17th. It was either filed on the 17th or 18th, the day of the Plan Commission meeting, in which the applicant stated that the equipment could not be placed on the existing tower because the tower is not tall enough, essentially was the argument stated in the affidavit. Now, what the applicant never evaluated or considered is that the existing tower can be extended, and we do have FAA approval that provides that the tower can be extended up to 79 feet. So the equipment that AT&T is looking to construct a new tower to build and place at a 72-foot height or 72-foot rad center could also be placed on the existing tower at the same height. I did submit a letter on August 20th to the Common Council. I didn't see it in the agenda packet, but you should have it, and there was 3 attachments with that letter. One was a letter from the FAA stating that we do have approval to extend the tower by 15 feet. The second piece is a letter from our engineer stating that the equipment, which is specifically referenced in the site plan proposed by the applicant for this permit, would be structurally sustainable to place the exact same equipment at the same height of 72 feet on the existing tower. And there's the third attachment to that letter is a radio frequency coverage comparison, which shows the coverage at a 72-foot rad center on the existing site, with blue coverage being the strongest and green, yellow the weakest, and red as having dropped calls, compared to on the proposed site. And of course, because it's going to be equipment at the same height, 210 feet away from each other, the coverage is nearly identical, substantially the same. So we do think it's evident that the applicant for AT&T was attempting essentially to pursue an end around the state statute requiring evaluation of co-location by not originally including the affidavit and then filing that affidavit without having considered whether the existing tower can be extended or not. And so for that reason, we don't believe that the application does comply with the state statute and should be denied on that reason alone. There was some talk about the economics of the situation. AT&T has renewed their lease for their existing equipment as of this past year, and they have not contacted SBA, to my knowledge, regarding any questions regarding the price of an extension to the tower or any sort of modification of rent or anything, any economic issues with regard to this tower. And that was not included as part of the application or cited in the affidavit as the reason for why this tower is necessary. So if that's the issue that's being raised, then AT&T needs to make that sworn statement that this is being pursued for economic reasons, not because there's a technical reason or a coverage reason. Lastly, the city's conditional use ordinance does require the city to consider factors, or it permits the city to consider factors such as safety and issues like that. And with this being in such close proximity to the airport, we think that is the idea of having 2 towers and within 210 feet of each other compared to 1 tower is a factor that should be considered as well. So for all of these reasons, our SBA's position is that the tower does not comply with the state statute and the local ordinance, and we ask that the application be denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Pollard, I just would note over here, just note for you that council did receive your letter and attachments.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Any other questions?
Council members? I do just have one. Did you say earlier that you do already have FAA approval?
Yes, that's included, I mean, and I heard Mr. Fowler from AT&T, he made a statement that there is a public comment period. So what the letter provides is that they don't have any, that the height would be approved at this level, barring any, barring the approval process. So I apologize if I stated that we have approval. It's been authorized for 79 feet. The public comment period would end in September. But there should be no reason why we wouldn't be able to have the tower extended.
I guess my other question would be, would any of these things be different or changed if, I believe there was a reference to the county having given approval, but would any of this change if the lease were not renewed between the county and the tower by the FAA? Because it's my understanding that the FAA owns the tower.
I believe, to my knowledge, the tower, our tower, is on the airport's property, or the county's property.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else registered?
I have no one registered here, but it's my understanding.
Do we have one waiting?
No.
Mr. Newman? No?
Okay.
Okay.
Then I have no further
All right.
individuals
Thank you
registered to
very
speak.
much. So we will move on to consent agenda. And I guess I would just ask, we didn't receive any written comments for the consent agenda, did we?
I did not.
Okay. Take a motion and a second on consent.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. Let me, my question actually relates to, hold on, resolution 20-362. I didn't announce that I was going to be talking about it, so I'm sorry if I'm going to get anyone on the spur of the moment. So my question relates to the broad difference of prices of the bid that took place. There was from what I gather, there were two bids. One bid, the total amount over 3 years was $84,000, and then the other was quite a bit smaller than that, quite a bit less than that. Can we explain the difference of how those bids could be so different from each other?
This is very similar to what we saw a few years ago when we bid this out with these two bidders as well. The last time this project was bid out, we had a similar response with the two bidders, and there was a very dramatic difference. About the only explanation I really have is the bidder we are recommending award to is just an individual. He's basically retired and is kind of doing this to keep active and doing some things that way. So I think his pricing reflects that, but the work that he has completed for us over the past several years has been satisfactory, so we are not concerned with recommending award to him again.
Okay.
I think James, explained it well. The only other thing I would add, sometimes in a purchasing context, some vendors are very busy, but they still choose to submit a bid, but maybe their price is a little bit higher. And if they're successful in their ability to secure it, it makes it worth their while to try to fit something into their program. So sometimes that's part of the thought process from the vendor in terms of them having an elevated bid price. But
Sure.
I think James explained it much more clearly.
All right, thank you.
Any other items on consent? All right, please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Ngurower.
Aye.
Erickson?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Palmieri?
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, moving on to new ordinances. There will be no action on this item. Ordinance 20-373 approves zone change from suburban mixed-use district to suburban mixed-use district with a planned development overlay for property located at 2755 Algoma Boulevard. Plan Commission recommends approval. And I guess I just asked, do we have any registered comments on this? No. Okay. All right. And then we have new resolutions. The first one is Resolution 20-374, approves special event downtown business improvement district to utilize Opera House Square for Jazz in the Square, September 2nd through the 30th on Wednesdays. Do we have anyone registered comments?
We are going to have somebody virtual.
To answer questions if there are.
All right.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Hello?
Can you hear
Okay.
us?
Hi. My name is Jessie Meidel from, I manage the Downtown Business Improvement District. It pretty much is exactly what you just said, just a kind of street performance every Wednesday in September from 5:30 to 7 each evening. And it'll just be, we'll encourage the community to just bring a lawn chair or a blanket and just enjoy the music. It's not going to be any sort of gathering. It's going to be more of just kind of a street performance, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, did you say you were encouraging folks to bring a lawn chair, but it's not a gathering?
Yeah, it's more of just like people will be, the jazz orgy will be performing on the street, and people can enjoy the park, enjoy the music, walk by. It's more of kind of an atmospheric thing.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other council members, questions? Councilmember Ford?
No, just questions or comments too? Yeah. Well, I just want to point out, in the application, it mentions that the Special Events Review Committee has a representative of the County Health Department on it, and that they did state they were comfortable with the precautions taken to ensure this event is done safely.
All right, I guess we should get a motion and a second on the item.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion then. Sounds like an exciting event. Jazz downtown. I heard a sax player last week, one of the buskers. It's pretty nice. Okay, please take the roll.
Ford?
Aye.
Allison Osby? Aye. Krause?
Aye.
Mugrower?
Aye.
Erickson?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Palmieri?
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, moving on. 20-375 approves special event Menominee Nation Arena to host a drive-in concert series in the Menominee Nation Arena, 1212 South Main Street parking lot, September 11th, 12th, 18th, 19th, and 26th. Is there anyone virtually for this one?
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is JD Fields. I'm the general manager for the Menominee Nation Arena. There has been a slight change in the schedule. I didn't have a chance to send this over ahead of time. It has been slimmed down actually to 3 different drive-in concerts instead of the proposed 5. Those would be September 12th, September 18th, and September 26th would be the only 3 drive-in concerts at the arena. Proposed concerts at the arena.
And
So
what's the reason for the modification?
it just was scheduled based upon the artists that we are in current conversations with.
All right, let's get a motion in a second on 375.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Anybody have questions for Mr. Fields? Or further discussion? All right, please take the roll.
Ford?
Do you want to amend it
Yeah.
to?
Would staff prefer we do, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I move to amend 20-375, approving only on the 12th, 18th, and 26th.
Second.
All right. Please take the roll on the amended version for 20-375.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Heschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next, we have 20-376, approved
No.
spot.
No, no.
I'm sorry.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended. Yep.
We
need to vote on
I thought we just voted as amended.
Nope.
No, we
voted on
approved
the
the
amendment.
amendment.
All right, sorry. Now we'll vote on the full item. Please
Ford.
take the roll.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Heschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Now we'll go to 376, approved spotlight designation, authorized redevelopment authority to acquire 668 North Main Street for $45,000. Is there anyone to speak to this item? All right, motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Davis, Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes,
Actually,
Mr. Davis, come
Mr.
on,
Davis,
come on
if
up.
you- if you wouldn't mind coming up, I'll ask the question while you're walking up. We had a discussion earlier. The acquisition of this property, if I'm correct, it helps in the potential redevelopment of that area, as well as some of the Jefferson Street projects that the RDA has been holding on to for a while. So this is something that will further that potential. We've got maybe some interested people and interested parties that might like to move forward with something in there, and this helps with that.
That is absolutely right. The RDA has acquired the properties on Jefferson over the last 20 years, and when we went out to RFP, the responders were interested in getting visibility from Main Street, and the developers are looking to use Main Street and Jefferson as a combination for a mixed-use development, and I think the RDA likes that idea. There's still another parcel to acquire before that comes to reality.
That's all I have.
Other questions? All right. Please take the roll on 20-376.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Heschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, so on our next item, 20-377, we did hear from several people earlier on this. Did we receive any additional written? We did receive some additional written things that I'm not sure if they made it to the clerk or not, some of the correspondence on this item.
I did not receive those.
Okay.
Do you
All right.
want to read them into the record?
Let's see here.
I can provide a copy to the clerk.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 20-377, approved conditional use permit to allow cellular telecommunications tower at 1620 Pelton Parkway. Plan Commission recommends approval. Take a motion and a second on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Mugrower? No?
I'll let somebody else start.
Councilmember Ford?
I guess I can start since I was at Plan Commission, and we did approve it at Plan Commission, and it is worth pointing out that there was an affidavit that was given to us at Plan Commission that addressed a lot of the issues that were brought up by the attorney from SBA, and yeah, felt completely satisfied with it, so I'm all good.
Any other concerns, questions? Councilmember McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I appreciate both sides and the communication that we'd received from both the interested parties. It's never fun to, especially in a council fashion where it's an open setting, debate, the business of both of these sides, the equity and the cost that this is going to have, and just the business relationship to have to talk about it in open setting is always uncomfortable. But I appreciate you guys coming here. I appreciate everyone communicating with us and reaching out and giving us info and background, and that's always good. As with Councilmember Ford mentioned, the information provided to us is consistent with what we need to approve. State statute gives us the plenty of latitude in terms of reviewing and approving these without having to be very strict. It gives us latitude in terms of we may do things. It doesn't require us to do things. It doesn't say shall. It doesn't say must. It says we may. And so taking those things into account, along with reading as part of some of this analysis that the FAA has already, they've given some approvals for the new for the new suggested tower, I'm in full agreement and full support, so.
All right, please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Rousey,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Next, we have 20-378, approve revised fund balance policy. Long Range Finance Committee recommends approval. Take a motion and a second on 20-378.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I see Mr. Van Gompel is on his way up. Councilmember Allison Osby?
I was just going to ask if perhaps Mr. Mugawa or Mr. Ford could also maybe talk about the process as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, no, just.
She was asking us to speak before you. That's all.
We said no way.
No, just at some point, I think it'd be great.
So, do
Yeah.
you guys
Sure.
want to start?
Yep.
Or do you want to allow Mr. Van Gompel to
No.
present?
Go ahead.
I'd be happy to get the ball rolling. This was brought to us by Mr. Van Gompel as part of the committee's work in terms of, we've got a list of things we'd like to look at in terms of, just revising and just revisiting. This was the next one that the group chose. Mr. Van Gompel put together just a redlined and revised version for us to take a look at. This is basically probably about 99% what it was before, just added the language about having a max, having a ceiling in terms of how much general fund we have sitting, in our fund, how many dollars are there. And the full committee was in support of this. It's been good to look at this policy, and we're going to look at some more going in the future. So.
Yeah, I'll echo those comments. I mean, this is us updating a policy that gets us, where we should be with our peers and with industry standards. As Councilmember Mugrower stated, we weren't that far off to begin with, but I think this is great practice, and I commend city staff for bringing these to our attention and going through the process of updating this, because this is really going to set us up, I think, well in the future, just to be financially stable. So.
Yeah, the only comment to add, we had part of the presentation on our budget workshop was that the fund balance is at about 31% right now of our future year's expenditures. This policy states that the maximum's 30, and so we would be slightly above that to the just like 1%, which is about $95,000. When we talk about the operating budget, we can talk about whether or not we want to use that $95,000 instead of levy to help pay for some other capital items that were identified as levy options moving forward. So, it's up to the city council to follow the recommendation at 30%. The 16% represents 2 months of operating expenses. You're talking about 30 or 32%, you're talking about 4 months. So that's a decision point. The committee, I think, felt fairly comfortable at 30%. If you want to be a little bit more conservative, you could increase that. I have no particular opinion. I thought and recommended 30%, thinking that would be a good cushion and margin.
Councilmember Allison Osby?
Oh, no, go ahead, Mr. Ford.
I'll just say that, yeah, I think that the 30% number makes a heck of a lot of sense, and I love the idea that we're going to have a cap on that, because while it is just financially responsible for us to have a certain amount of operating expenses on hand, at the same time, we don't need to be hanging on to taxpayers' money above and beyond what we actually need. So there is a balance to be set there, and I think this holds us accountable.
And I just have a question about number 5, just a kind of a clarification, and I just saw this, I didn't see it on the first read. Just could you talk a little bit more about the funds in excess of the 30% of the unassigned fund balance may be considered for supplement to pay-as-you-go capital outlay expenditures? If you could just talk a little bit to maybe what would be some examples of that?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I get pretty passionate about that type of stuff. The reason we talked about this at Long Range Finance and for your consideration is that a lot of communities sometimes get themselves into trouble when they start using fund balance for operating purposes. So if you have a situation when you're above your maximum amount, if you use it for one-time capital expenditures, expenditures that you normally would be part of your levy, but that you don't really tie it to just the operation side of things, is probably more prudent, because it's hard to build that reliance on a year-end, a sustainability revenue stream, a year-in and year-out source of revenue coming from your fund balance, because it's not going to be there year after year. So the thought process is you kind of identified capital items, large purchases, that are more a one-time expense for that use of fund balance.
Wouldn't want to apply it to payroll, would want to apply it to
Exactly.
a vehicle purchase or a specific project we were looking to improve.
Councilmember Ellison Osby.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Van Gompel, as well as Councilmember Ford and Mugarauer. Long Range Finance was one of the first committees I served on for a number of years, and we have just been blessed as a community to be able to have the intellectual assets of community members that have served on that. Because when it comes to the policies and things in regards to, our budget and the different things that they take a look at, it really does require a lot of thought and process. And although they're not a voting committee or board, they certainly have, as a group, and the council members that have served certainly have offered a lot. So thank you to the both of you for serving on that, as well as staff and the board.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I'll use a point of privilege here just to take the opportunity to say that we do have an opening on the Long Range Finance Board right now. So if those of you who may have the passion that Mr. Van Gompel expressed in these things would love to hear or see your application online under the city website, government, boards and commissions. There's an application that applies to all. So certainly welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's take the roll on 20-378.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugarauer.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
And speaking of money, 20-379, approved 2021-2025 capital improvement plan. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. No discussion on the capital improvement plan. All right, then. Please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugarauer.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, very good. Thank you. Next, we have a pending resolution 20-380, approve installation of new sidewalk West Waukah Avenue South Side from Belfield Drive to South Washburn Street. Staff recommends laying over until September 8th, 2020 council meeting. We have a motion and a second on the item.
Yeah, can I make a motion to lay it over? September 8th?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, let's take the roll on laying it over.
Is there discussion?
I'm sorry, discussion.
Sure. One of the reasons why I want to talk about this is that, Bike and Ped had a very in-depth conversation about this last week and still suggested moving forward with the plan as it was originally proposed to us at our last meeting. And so I'm just wondering the rationale of why we want to lay it over now.
I think I could answer that. At the last council meeting, the council members had a variety of different questions to understand the history and the background, and staff wanted to make sure that we provided all that information and were comprehensive. So that's really the reason for the layover, just to make sure that we compile all the information that the council members requested last meeting.
Well, then, I guess I would like to express that an aspect of planning, we maybe didn't want to have that on the Bike and Ped agenda for this month, because it created a pretty intense level of discussion that didn't have the direction of the full council behind it.
A big part of that being on the bike and ped agenda was part of helping us lay out all of the information that we were requested
Sure.
from the council last time. So in order to assist staff with gathering all the information, we needed that weigh-in from the bike and ped committee as well. So that was a part of gathering
Okay.
all of the information.
But I would also say that their context of the premise of why it was put forward didn't change in the first place, in my opinion, so.
Well, as I recall, I think there were several council members, myself included, who were kind of interested in the sequencing and whether or not Bike and Ped made that specific recommendation for that sequence before the other, I believe, Washburn one was put in. And if I recall, that was part of what they needed to do at council's direction. But I understand what you're saying too.
Yeah, and they did that. I'm not,
Okay.
I guess I'm not contesting that. It's just I guess the sequence of how this was taking place is that I think this might turn out to be a situation where the council might feel differently than how the Bike and Ped committee feels about this. And that, in my opinion, came out in that meeting, especially as being the lone council rep on that committee. I had lots of questions. I did watch the last meeting, and so I had those questions coming into the meeting even though I wasn't there, and then had one heck of a time debating and conversing about those at the meeting, and being not on the winning side of that conversation. So I guess it'll be an interesting conversation for us as we move forward with that, because I think we may not see eye to eye on something in regards to what a committee is providing to us.
And, that is a part of being the council is you listen to the recommendations from staff and from the committees, but you don't always go in the same direction. I've witnessed that, on numerous occasions, and that is, you are right as the council to take all that information and say, you know what, we want to head in a different direction, or we want to head in this direction. So that does happen.
And I could be totally wrong too when it comes back to council. But it was just, I myself was having a hard time trying to see the bigger picture of what just this stretch of sidewalk could potentially do in regards to other areas. So.
Well, maybe when you give your update later on the agenda, you could share some of that.
I can try.
Councilmember Mugerauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand it puts Councilmember Peschel in an awkward position, but I think we're all in those at times. I'm glad that discussion took place then. I've on numerous occasions for different projects have criticized and critiqued the Bike and Ped plan. I have, as well as some of the recommendations from Traffic Advisory. It's their job to make good, solid recommendations to us based upon the information provided to them, and based upon their knowledge and their collective decision making. In the end, it's our decision. It's our right to follow their guidance or to take that into account, yet sometimes not go along with their guidance. Personally, when the Bike and Ped plan, and I guess this will be for those on that committee that are questioning, maybe where I'm coming from in terms of this. When I voted in favor of approving the Bike and Ped plan, it was 2019, I believe it was, affirming the revised plan. I did not like everything in that plan. Nobody ever does in any of these plans, yet you vote for it based upon the whole, and you do your best to try to follow the plan when applicable, when you can. In this case, there's a few council members that maybe don't think that the application of that plan at this moment, at this time in that area is advisable. And they have to be okay with that. So that's my only comments on that. I understand you got put in a tough spot for that conversation. I think you can handle it.
I enjoyed it.
But sometimes that's how it has to go, that we go against the guidance and the advice that's given to us.
Well, we're not there yet, so. All right, so the motion that's on the floor is whether or not to lay over this item to September 8th. Councilmember Ford.
Just real quick, want to point out that at our previous meeting, we did ask if this was a time-sensitive issue, and we're assured that it'd be okay to wait. So as we consider the specific motion to delay, we did get assurances from city staff that it wouldn't screw up the schedule.
Yep. All right, so let's vote on the motion to lay over.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugauer.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Heschel.
Aye.
O'Meary.
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, so then procedurally, we don't need to do anything else with that one. Let's go on to council discussion, direction of city manager, and future agenda items. First one being affordable housing study workshop, September 8th at 5 p.m., but I believe we may end up with some scheduling changes, perhaps.
Well, I can start off the discussion in that we are ready to do a virtual presentation with the consultant on September 8th at 5 p.m. And we've invited, or will be inviting, other collaborators on affordable housing. However, it has been brought to my attention that if you'd want the consultant in person, then they'd prefer the September 22nd meeting, and then we'd notify that for all the collaborators as well. So it's kind of up to the council when virtual on the 8th at 5 versus in person on the 22nd. And the other complicating factor is I've heard that you may need a closed session prior to the council meeting on the 8th, which would double book you at 5
Sure.
o'clock.
Well, depending upon how heavy that agenda is, would council have any interest in doing the closed session at, like, how much time do you think, an hour, or a half hour?
I'm thinking probably half hour, 45 minutes.
So would council have an interest in doing like a 4:30 closed session, and then like a 5:15 workshop? Oh, no, we can't do that. We'd have to do 5 because we're squeezing in presenters in
Yes.
small, short, brief presentations.
Mhm.
I know that's a little bit ambitious, but just thought I'd ask.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I mean, and if you don't want to move the meeting to the 22nd, another option is to have a closed session after the meeting as well.
Yes.
So I am bringing in outside counsel for that.
So that might be expensive.
Yes.
To do it after. And we also have the levy target discussion as well on that date. So are we?
One advantage to going to the 22nd, you get the consultant in person. So, I mean,
This is true.
that's another option.
But do we save money if they're virtual for travel?
I think they're,
No, we're double dipping on the Jackson Street project because that's when we're planning on doing the public information meeting the day or before or after. So they'll
Sure.
be in town for the other project.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me. Move the
22nd?
22nd?
A to the 22nd.
All right, and then we have that individual and those invitees.
Yes, we'll let them know tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And then closed session at 5 that day,
And then it's, yeah, we are probably
most likely.
most likely having a closed session at 5.
All right.
thank you, council.
Thank you. And then the levy target discussion.
Right on September 8th. Yeah, we've talked about that in the previous budget meeting that we had, that there was an idea that we might be able to have that dialogue on September 8th, if council's comfortable with that.
Would that be just part of the regular agenda or a separate?
Well, I think we could incorporate it into the regular agenda unless Finance Director Van Gompel thinks it might take a little bit longer.
I guess our thought process was that we had talked about this as part of our budget workshop. The council wanted the opportunity just to weigh in and give us some additional feedback on maybe some direction you wanted to go on the levy. So I think it would be part of the normal agenda. It's just basically a council discussion on if you want to set any parameters to staff before we get to making our recommendation on the budget.
I guess I would envision it to be, right at this point in the council meeting where it's direction.
Right. Would it be helpful, Director Van Gompel, to have council members individually email you or you know, like a pre-meeting survey, if you will, if they have, you know, some idea of what they're looking at?
Yeah, obviously that would be helpful, but sometimes it's also better to have a little dialogue and discussion so that people can have, you know, a back and forth on what you see as appropriate parameters. So either way, I guess it would be helpful.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I know at the budget workshop, I mentioned that it would be really helpful for us to have some information about how different levy rates would affect service capacity. Again, nothing too ridiculous, but just what is this going to do if we lower the levy or if we have this levy rate? Because that gives us something more substantive to deal with as opposed to just picking a number.
Yeah.
So you're referring to different scenarios?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see here. Next, we have council member announcements and statements and report of liaison board and commissions. Councilmember Peschel, do you want to start with the bike and ped by chance?
If I could, I'd like to make a point of privilege.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So thank you for this opportunity. I want to take a moment to thank the Common Council, the city staff and administration, and several staff members, as well as the Oshkosh Police Department and the Oshkosh Fire Department. On July 2nd, my mother abruptly passed away, and I want to thank you all for the condolences and the service that our staff has provided in helping address that situation. So it was abrupt, it was not expected, it was a pretty challenging time for my family. So the card of condolences was much appreciated. So thank you for that. And the one thing I don't want to thank is COVID. It wasn't a COVID-related death, but COVID surely made it hard for our family to be able to grieve in the normal sense. So that made it very, very challenging. But we got through it, and the family is on the mend. So thank you for that, and thank you for the privilege. So Bike and Ped, we met last Wednesday. Let's just say the committee was not expecting such a grand conversation related to Walcott Avenue. I think we spoke for about an hour, going back and forth and debating the merits of it, and ended up, going with the again suggesting what had been previously suggested and everything. So, but I think we only got through that topic, as well as we started a conversation on e-scooters. And the idea is that we put forward an idea of regulating the thought of e-scooters on roads that have speed limits over 25, I believe. I think that's correct. I may be wrong. And then going forward with creating a pilot study that, Lynn, do you know or not?
Yeah, it would
Okay.
be a pilot study, basically licensing or permitting a specific entity, and
Yeah.
it would give you more control over it, at least initially, and they would have to operate, a commercial enterprise with e-scooters would have to operate under that pilot
Yeah,
program.
they wouldn't be able to even operate in the community if there wasn't a pilot.
Yeah.
And there's, I think there's 2 communities. One community actually has a pilot, and that was Madison, I believe it was. But,
Yeah.
so I think it was Madison and Milwaukee both have some type of program
I think
related to
Madison had the
e-scooters.
program, and Milwaukee was in the process,
Yeah.
but didn't end up going forward. But I might have those reversed, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, and I wasn't fully prepared to discuss that either, so that's my fault, that's on me. So, but thank you for your help. But there is talk to having another, potentially another meeting before next month's meeting to kind of get through the other elements that were on that agenda as well, because the whole committee was kind of taken back by the longevity of the conversation related to the sidewalk. So that's all I have. Thank you.
But
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking you were going to share what the recommendation was or what the outcome was.
Sure.
On the item.
The recommendation was to, was suggestive to maintaining what had previously been suggested, and that's running a sidewalk up Walcaw, I think from Belfield. Is that right, Jim?
Belfield to
Belfield
Washburn.
to the driveway of the hotel.
Oh, right, okay.
So we had a great amount of discussion about the merits of extending to that point. I debated greatly about whether we should, bank that money for potential pedestrian enhancements on Washburn to be supportive of the events that take place at Country USA and Rock USA and other events out there. At one point, we talked about just putting the sidewalk on the south end to connect the neighborhood as a whole, and then extending it closer to 20th. The one thing that did come out of the conversation was you guys had discussed why are I think there was discussion about why was the bus routes, the bus stops on the north end versus the south side, and that was just related to how the route goes through that area. It was a good long conversation about this. So,
Okay.
does that answer?
Oh, I thought you were going to share. Maybe I missed it. Other boards and commission reports, anybody? Councilmember Ford?
Plan Commission met, and the big thing there was the discussion of the new tower on the EAA grounds. But then we also had a workshop involving a project on Oshkosh Avenue that will be coming up in the future. It will be a cool thing for the city. So.
Anyone else? All right, just real quick, with the redevelopment authority, of course, those items from this morning's meeting were on tonight's agenda, so you're very well aware of that. And then the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will be meeting again this Thursday. That will be their second meeting in a month's time. They're very energetic and ready to pursue things, and that's all I have to report. So next we have city manager announcements and statements. Looks like Mr. Davis is here, but John, are you going to, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll turn it over to Community Development Director Davis just to talk about the Great Neighborhoods Program.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just in general terms, the Great Neighborhoods Program has been a program we've used to help some of our neighborhood associations accomplish some of their goals in their neighborhoods, and we've worked very closely with them over the last few years. Since we've had the program running, we've learned a few things, and we think we're going to update these requirements, eligible projects, timeliness, so it more corresponds to what the council's goals are in the strategic plan, and try to encourage more projects from the neighborhood associations that are either a little more reluctant or don't have the capacity to do an application like this, and give them a better chance at getting some of their projects done, so that we can, say, spread the projects around the city and the neighborhood associations a little better than we have in the past. Those are the big goals that we were looking at. COVID-19 also affected it, so we had to push back the date a little bit because nobody's been able to meet to talk about projects, but we're still hoping to be able to get applications out here in September so that we can get these reviewed. Some of these are just pictures of what we've been working on. I mean, some of the highlights in recent years has been the Emmeline Cook refurbishment project. I think we saw the William Waters Plaza, which is another big project that's going to include a gazebo with donated money. That's the exercise equipment that in Menominee Park that Menominee South proposed. Various trails that we've included to connect neighborhoods to various city amenities. Gives you an idea of what we've been accomplishing over the last few years. We want to make sure that we give every neighborhood association an opportunity to share in that, take advantage of that program.
Could I just ask, what are the dollar amounts in that Great Neighborhoods grant project round coming up what's available?
This year, we have $250,000. We usually take off the top $25,000 to go for our terrace trees. That's still worked on right now, so it's approximately $225,000 for this year.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Alan.
Okay, you're welcome.
The other two items we have on the city manager's report is just outstanding issues. I know the council members have a copy of that matrix, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in regard to that. And the other item is COVID-19 update. I don't have anything new to report. I spoke to Chief Stanley about that, so there's no update in regard to COVID.
Mayor.
Yes.
Uh,
Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. Mr. Fitzpatrick, I don't necessarily have any comments for you.
Okay.
So you're off the hook on that one, but you're
right.
definitely welcome to provide any input in the conversation.
Okay.
So my comments are more related to a conversation that I had with City Manager Roloff today related to the community conversations to address racism. So, and I'd called him today and just kind of asked him for an update on where we were with that, let's call it a project at this point. And he kind of indicated that just what it states in the report here, that he's still at that point where he and the chief have been initiating a discussion within the religious community with Pastor Butler. They've taken part in some trainings. But he has had some not struggles, but challenges with his time and being available to initiate that further, to get that going further along. So,
I'm sorry, who had trouble with their schedule?
Mark.
Oh.
He didn't have trouble. He was on vacation.
Ah,
So,
okay.
and so I kind of asked him what can we do? What can I do, to help get this further along? And I think originally back to when this topic came up, we kind of were in this position where we were going to let Mark and staff kind of take the process and kind of go with it. Well, we're a couple more months down the line, and there's been some progress that's taken place. But I asked Mark, what can we do for him to help him along and do this? And so the idea that I kind of came up with is either we can talk about right now groups or organizations or people that we would like him to reach out to initiate and to build conversation and build to taking this a little bit further. Or I'd like to encourage all of you to take some time with Mark and to express to him people or organizations in the community that you think would be worth reaching out to help create the community conversation a little bit more. So I know it's a little bit different than what we talked about before, but I just think it's such an important thing that we as leaders should also take a little bit of step of initiative in saying that, hey, this is a group that I think is doing some really good work in the community. Reach out to their executive director, or reach out to their program manager, or reach out to their pastor to doing that. I don't know what the right groups are. I don't want to leave out any groups in this process. But I think it's okay for you guys to talk about who we should be reaching out to. So go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt your conversation, but I did also have a chance to talk to Mark earlier today, and he did mention that you had this discussion.
Okay.
And I certainly, council members reaching out to others to have this dialogue, I think is a good idea. But as an additional option, and I don't want to put too much pressure on this group, but the mayor talked about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that group has great potential. I think the construction of that group has been very well thought out. I think that, you know, they're formulating just some of their basic structure right now, but their charge really is to engage the community. And so I think this is really kind of in their wheelhouse. Their focus is to try to work with the community and then, you know, gather information and then bring that information back to us. So I would just offer that. I don't know if they're ready to take on that charge right now on Thursday with their meeting because they got to get some structural things in place. But I guess I would say, I think moving forward, that might be another resource that the council can rely on in terms of information, advice, outreach, those sorts of things that you mentioned, Bob.
And thank you for that. And I know Councilmember Allison Osby wants to weigh in here, but that was actually what I was going to say is that, you know, that group is very, very motivated and inspired, and it's an expectation that that external focus of that committee would be doing those continued conversations along with what council had had that conversation with City Manager and Police Chief Smith. But of course, you know, a number of us are having those conversations anyway. But I appreciate what you're saying, you know, maybe with some eye towards some of the organizations and entities additionally in a more formal process. So, Councilmember Allison Osby.
Oh, no, thank you. Actually, you know, thank you, Councilmember Peschel, for bringing it up. And to what Mr. Fitzpatrick said and what you said, Mayor, you know, I think, you know, let them get on their feet. And my only comment is, you know, perhaps if we were going to have a discussion about what, you know, maybe might be things for Mr. Roloff to participate in, that maybe that conversation would be more appropriate for when he's actually here.
Sure.
But thanks for that additional recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, unless there's someone else that wants to talk.
Okay.
Okay. And I want to talk about, I want to go somewhere where I'm not comfortable at this point. So, and it's not a bad thing. But, you know, we all, I think every single one of us received that email last week that talked about defunding police. And what really got me thinking about this was that the authors of that email are regional leaders. They're regional leaders. They're not Oshkosh leaders. They're not fully Winnebago leaders. And I'm not discounting that in any way, but it really got me thinking about how much do we really know about our community in regards to the diversity organizations that exist in our community, and how much are they expressing to us as counselors. You know, some of us might talk to them more than others, you know, and but it really got me thinking about who are these leaders in our community, and it got me thinking, well, where's Mark in all of this? Because we hadn't heard much of that conversation.
And I'll just tell you that Mark and I had a conversation about that very thing.
Yeah,
so.
and he indicated that as well.
Yep.
And so I wanted to make sure that we were being a resource for Mark to expand this community conversation, because we all interact with all different groups of people, and know people that can help energize this conversation into being something that's feasible and cohesive and exciting in our community a little bit.
Well, thank you,
So,
Councilmember
thank you.
Peschel, and as Councilmember Allison Osby said, you know, maybe we can go a little further with that when city manager is here, as this is a city manager announcements and statements, but duly noted. We do have another item here yet, the COVID-19 update.
Right. I had a discussion with Chief Stanley. He doesn't have anything additional to report at this time. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so the last meeting, we didn't have any updates, and we don't have anything new. So it's just kind of status quo. All right. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Aye.